Why are all the cards blocked? My mother-in-law whispered as the payment terminal flashed the same message for the third time. And in that moment, standing in the middle of a crowded restaurant on a bright Saturday afternoon, I realized something was terribly wrong. My name is Margaret Dawson. I'm 68 years old, and until that day, I believed I understood every important thing about my family. I was wrong. The lunch had been Evelyn's idea. At 87, my mother-in-law still enjoyed getting out of the house whenever she could. She loved small traditions, and for years we had shared lunch together on the first Saturday of every month. Nothing fancy, just a quiet meal, good conversation, and a chance to spend time together. That morning had started like dozens before it. The sky was clear, the temperature hovered around 72 degrees, and Evelyn seemed happier than she had in weeks. She wore a light blue cardigan and the pearl earrings her late husband had given her decades ago. As we drove to the restaurant, she told me stories I had already heard many times. I never minded. Some memories deserve to be told more than once. We ordered sandwiches, soup, and slices of pie for dessert. We laughed about old family vacations and talked about the upcoming summer. For nearly 2 hours, everything felt normal, comfortable, safe. Then the check arrived. I reached for my wallet without thinking. The waitress smiled politely and handed me the small payment device. I inserted my credit card. A second later, the machine beeped. Declined. I frowned. That had never happened before. Must be a mistake, I said. I tried again. The same result. Declined. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. I pulled out a different card. Another beep. Another rejection. Across the table, Evelyn looked concerned. Try this one, dear, she said, sliding her card toward me. Maybe your bank is having issues today. I nodded and inserted her card. The machine processed for several seconds. Then the message appeared again. Declined. Evelyn blinked in confusion. That can't be right. The waitress remained professional, but I noticed her smile fade slightly. Nearby conversations seemed louder suddenly. I could feel eyes drifting toward our table. Evelyn searched through her purse and found a second card. Declined. A third card. Declined. My face felt warm. Not because of the money. Between the two of us, lunch was hardly expensive. What frightened me was that none of this made sense. Evelyn was careful with her finances. Meticulous, even. She checked every statement, every receipt, every balance. There must be some mistake, she murmured. There has to be. Fortunately, I found enough cash folded inside an old compartment of my wallet to cover the bill. The waitress thanked us and walked away. Neither of us touched the remaining bites of pie. Evelyn stared out the window. I stared at the payment receipts spread across the table. For declined transactions. For questions with no answers. Then my phone vibrated. A text message had arrived from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But when I opened it, every drop of color seemed to drain from my face. The message contained only 6 words. Maybe you should stop asking questions. I stared at the message for several seconds before showing it to Evelyn. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses and read the words twice. The color drained from her face. Who would send something like that? She asked quietly. I wished I had an answer. The drive home felt different from our cheerful trip to the restaurant earlier that day. The silence inside my car seemed heavier somehow. Evelyn sat looking out the passenger window, watching neighborhoods pass by without really seeing them. Every few minutes she would shake her head as though trying to wake herself from a bad dream. When we arrived at her house, she invited me inside for coffee. Normally we would sit in the sunroom and talk about gardening or family news. This time neither of us mentioned anything ordinary. The declined cards and the mysterious text sat between us like an unwelcome guest. Margaret, she finally said, wrapping both hands around her coffee mug, there is something I have not told you. I looked up immediately. Her voice carried a note of uncertainty that I rarely heard. Evelyn had always been one of the strongest people I knew. A few months ago, Nicole offered to help me organize my finances. My stomach tightened. What kind of help? I asked carefully. Evelyn looked embarrassed. The online banking passwords confused me. New security codes. Email confirmations. Things change so fast now. Nicole said she could make everything simpler. I remained silent. Evelyn continued. She helped me update accounts, install banking applications, and organize paperwork. She said Ryan worried about me managing everything alone. I thought back over the past year. Nicole had become increasingly involved in family matters. At the time it had seemed thoughtful. She always appeared helpful, always smiling, always volunteering. Yet now small memories began resurfacing. Nicole insisting on handling documents during family gatherings. Nicole intercepting mail and bringing it inside before anyone else. Nicole casually asking questions about account balances and investment statements. At the time none of it seemed unusual. Now every memory felt different. Evelyn stood and walked toward a small desk in the corner of the room. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. There were forms, she said softly. Several of them. She handed the folder to me. Inside were copies of financial documents. Most looked routine. Then one page caught my attention. It authorized changes to account notifications and contact information. My pulse quickened. Do you remember signing this? I asked. Evelyn frowned. Not really. Nicole said they were routine updates. I studied the page more closely. A different email address appeared under the notification section. It was not Evelyn's. Have you received your bank statements lately? I asked. Evelyn hesitated. Not as many as I used to. Another piece of the puzzle slid into place. Suddenly the missing statements, the blocked cards, and the strange text message no longer felt unrelated. They felt connected. Outside, the afternoon sunlight had begun to fade. The room grew darker around us. Evelyn sank slowly into her chair. For the first time that day she looked frightened. Do you think someone has been hiding things from me? She whispered. Looked down at the documents spread across the coffee table. Then I thought about the unknown message on my phone. Maybe you should stop asking questions. The problem was that I had only just started. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those declined receipts lying on the restaurant table, and the message glowing on my phone screen. By 7 o'clock the next morning, I was already sitting at my kitchen table with a notebook, a cup of coffee, and copies of the documents Evelyn had shown me. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock. I began writing down dates, account changes, and anything that seemed unusual. The more I looked, the more uncomfortable I became. Around 9 o'clock, Evelyn called. Her voice sounded tired. She admitted she had spent half the night searching through old files in her study. Several monthly statements were missing. Not misplaced. Missing. That distinction mattered. Evelyn was the most organized person I knew. She kept records going back decades. If documents had disappeared, someone had removed them. We agreed to meet at her house before visiting the bank together the following morning. When I arrived, she already had several folders spread across the dining room table. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating stacks of papers that represented an entire lifetime of careful planning. We spent hours comparing old statements with newer records. Small details began to stand out. Email notifications had stopped arriving months ago. Certain account alerts had been disabled. Mailing preferences had been changed from paper statements to electronic delivery. Yet Evelyn rarely used email and certainly would never have requested that change herself. As we worked, another memory surfaced. About 6 months earlier, Nicole had insisted on helping Evelyn replace her old laptop. At the time it seemed thoughtful. Now I wondered whether it had been convenient. Every answer seemed to create 2 new questions. Shortly after noon, Ryan stopped by unexpectedly. He greeted us warmly, but I noticed his expression change when he saw the paperwork covering the table. "What is all this?" he asked. Evelyn hesitated. Before she could answer, I explained that we were trying to understand why her cards had stopped working. Ryan immediately looked confused. "That cannot be right," he said. "Nicole told me everything was organized." The moment he said her name, something shifted in the room. Not anger, not accusation, just a heavy silence. Ryan seemed to notice it too. "What?" he asked. "Why are you both looking at me like that?" Evelyn forced a small smile and changed the subject. After he left, neither of us spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, she looked at me and said something I will never forget. "I trust my grandson. I love my family. But lately, I feel as though everyone knows more about my life than I do. The sadness in her voice broke my heart. Late that afternoon, as I gathered the folders to take home, a single folded document slipped from the bottom of one stack and landed on the floor. I picked it up casually at first. Then I froze. It was an authorization form bearing Evelyn's signature. At least it appeared to be her signature. The document granted account management privileges to someone else. And written clearly beside the authorization line was a name neither of us expected to see. The name on the authorization form was Nicole Dawson. For several seconds neither Evelyn nor I spoke. The grandfather clock in the hallway seemed unusually loud as it marked each passing second. Evelyn adjusted her glasses and read the document again. Then a third time. "I do not remember signing this," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the uncertainty beneath it. I sat down across from her and studied the page more carefully. The signature looked similar to hers, yet something about it felt different. The strokes were hesitant, almost rushed. Evelyn had always signed her name with confidence. This looked like someone trying very hard to imitate her handwriting. Could it have been included with other documents? I asked gently. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment. Possibly. Nicole brought paperwork several times. She would place sticky notes where I needed to sign. She always said everything was routine. As the afternoon sunlight faded outside the windows, memories began returning to her. Small moments that had seemed harmless at the time. Nicole insisting on helping sort mail. Nicole volunteering to organize online accounts. Nicole offering to handle technical issues whenever something stopped working. None of it had raised concern because it arrived wrapped in kindness. That was what made it so difficult to process now. The next morning we arrived at the bank shortly after it opened. The branch manager, Linda Harper, greeted Evelyn warmly. They had known each other for years. After hearing a brief explanation of the situation, Linda led us into a private office and closed the door. The atmosphere immediately felt serious. Evelyn handed over the authorization form. Linda examined it carefully before pulling up account records on her computer. Her expression changed almost immediately. She did not look shocked. She looked concerned. That worried me even more. For nearly 20 minutes she reviewed account histories, contact changes, notification settings, and access permissions. Finally, she folded her hands on the desk. "Mrs. Dawson," she said carefully, "there have been several modifications made to your accounts over the past 18 months. Evelyn leaned forward. "What kind of modifications?" Linda glanced at the screen again. Primary contact information was changed. Alert settings were disabled. Multiple replacement cards were requested. Several mailing preferences were updated. I felt my stomach tighten. "Who requested those changes?" I asked. Linda hesitated. "That is where things become complicated." She turned the monitor slightly so Evelyn could see. A list of requests appeared on the screen, each tied to Account Management Authority. Nicole's name appeared again and again. Evelyn stared silently at the monitor. The room felt smaller somehow. Linda continued speaking in a calm professional voice. "The authority was granted through documentation we received. Under normal circumstances these actions would appear authorized." Evelyn lowered her eyes. "But they were not authorized by me." Linda nodded slowly. "That is exactly what we need to determine." Then she clicked into another section. Of the account records. A series of transactions appeared on the screen. Most were ordinary. A few were not. Several transfers stood out immediately because neither Evelyn nor I recognized them. The dates stretched back more than a year. The amounts varied, but together they represented far more money than either of us expected. Linda looked directly at Evelyn. "Mrs. Dawson, before we proceed further, there is something else you should know. These transfers were not sent to a stranger. They were sent to an account connected to someone inside your family." Neither Evelyn nor I spoke as we stared at the transaction records. The office suddenly felt too warm, too quiet. Linda gave us a few moments before continuing. "I want to be very careful," she said. "At this stage, I am only sharing documented account activity. We still need a formal review before drawing conclusions." Evelyn nodded slowly, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. For nearly 90 years she had trusted the people she loved. Now she was sitting in a bank office learning that money had been moving out of her accounts without her full understanding. Linda printed several pages and placed them neatly on the desk. I studied the transfers. Some were a few $100s. Others were much larger. Individually, they might not have attracted attention. Together, they represented a substantial amount. The dates stretched across 18 months. Whoever arranged this had been patient, careful, deliberate. Where did the money go? I asked. Linda turned one page toward us. Most of the transfers were directed to an account associated with a family-owned business expense card. Evelyn frowned. Ryan does not own a business. Linda hesitated. The account registration includes both Ryan and Nicole. Hearing their names together somehow made everything more painful. Evelyn looked down at her hands. Ryan would never do this intentionally. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I wanted to agree. I truly did. But facts were beginning to replace assumptions. Linda continued reviewing the records. Several replacement debit cards had been requested during the previous year. Yet Evelyn remembered receiving only 1. Notification emails had been redirected. Security alerts had been disabled. Mailing addresses remained unchanged, which explained why nothing appeared suspicious from the outside. Whoever managed the changes understood enough about banking procedures to avoid obvious warning signs. As the meeting continued, another detail emerged. 3 weeks before our restaurant lunch, a request had been submitted to temporarily restrict certain card activity. That explained the embarrassing scene at the restaurant. It had not been a system error. Someone had initiated the restriction. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment. I feel foolish, she said quietly. Linda immediately shook her head. Please do not. Situations like this happen because trust exists. Trust is not a weakness. For the first time that morning, I saw tears gathering in Evelyn's eyes. She quickly looked away toward the window. The sight broke my heart. This was not about money anymore. It was about dignity, respect, family. After another 30 minutes, Linda outlined the next steps. A formal review would begin immediately. Access permissions would be frozen until everything could be verified. New cards would be issued directly to Evelyn. Additional security measures would be added. It was a relief, but it did not answer the biggest question. Why? As we stood to leave, Linda handed me a final printout. You should look at this carefully, she said. It was a log showing account access history. Most entries appeared ordinary. Then one date caught my attention. My stomach tightened instantly. The access activity had occurred at a time when Ryan and Nicole were supposedly on vacation in Arizona. Yet the system showed repeated account activity from a device located less than 5 miles from Evelyn's home. I looked at the timestamp again. Then again. Someone had not just moved money. Someone had lied about where they were. And suddenly the entire story became much bigger than either of us had imagined. The drive back from the bank was quiet. Evelyn sat beside me looking out the window, but I could tell her mind was somewhere else. Mine was too. The access log kept replaying in my thoughts. Ryan and Nicole had posted vacation photos from Arizona during that week. I remembered seeing them myself. Desert sunsets, restaurant dinners, smiling selfies. Yet the bank record showed account activity occurring less than 5 miles from Evelyn's house. One of those things could not be true. That evening I decided to do something simple. I stopped guessing and started verifying. I opened my laptop and searched through old family messages, social media posts, and photographs. At first I found exactly what I expected. Pictures from Arizona, comments from friends, travel updates. Then I began looking more carefully at dates and timestamps. Small inconsistencies appeared almost immediately. One photograph had been uploaded on a Tuesday, but contained metadata showing it had actually been taken weeks earlier. Another image appeared during the supposed vacation yet showed weather conditions that did not match Arizona at that time. Alone, none of it proved anything. Together, it painted an uncomfortable picture. The next morning, Evelyn called me before breakfast. Her voice sounded stronger than it had in days. Margaret, she said, I found something else. Less than an hour later, I was sitting at her kitchen table again. She placed an old notebook in front of me. 4 years Evelyn had recorded important financial conversations, appointments, and account changes. Most entries were ordinary. Then I found several notes mentioning Nicole, password updates, card replacements, security reviews. Every major change seemed connected to her involvement. What surprised me most was one entry written nearly a year earlier. In careful handwriting, Evelyn had written, "Nicole says Ryan is overwhelmed. She offered to manage the paperwork for a while. I hope this helps them." I stared at the sentence for a long moment. There it was. Trust. The very thing Linda had talked about at the bank. Evelyn had not been careless. She had been generous. Around noon my phone rang. The caller ID showed Ryan's name. I answered immediately. He sounded nervous. "Mom told me you both went to the bank," he said. "Why did nobody tell me?" I chose my words carefully. "Because we wanted facts before conversations." Silence followed. Then he surprised me. "Nicole has been acting strange lately," he admitted. "She gets defensive whenever money comes up." I thought it was stress. For the first time since this began, uncertainty entered his voice. Not denial. Not anger. Uncertainty. After we ended the call, I looked at Evelyn. She looked back at me. Neither of us said anything for several seconds. We did not need to. The situation was changing. The story was no longer about missing statements or blocked cards. It was becoming something much bigger. Someone had manipulated trust. Someone had hidden information. And now, for the first time, even Ryan seemed to realize that the version of events he believed might not be the truth at all. 3 days later, Ryan asked if he could meet with me alone. We chose a small coffee shop halfway between our homes. When I arrived, he was already there, staring into a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. He looked exhausted. Older somehow. The confident man I had known for years seemed to have been replaced by someone carrying a weight he did not understand. After a few moments of silence, he reached into his jacket pocket and placed a stack of papers on the table. "I found these in our home office," he said quietly. The documents were credit card statements, loan records, account summaries. As I turned the pages, a pattern emerged immediately. Several debts had accumulated over the past 2 years. Some were connected to luxury purchases. Others were connected to personal accounts Ryan claimed he had never seen before. "I thought our finances were fine," he admitted. "Nicole always handled the details. Whenever I asked questions, she already had answers." His voice carried more disappointment than anger. That worried me. Disappointment usually appears when trust begins to collapse. I carefully reviewed the paperwork. Some transactions matched dates from the records Linda had shown us at the bank. The connection was becoming impossible to ignore. For the first time, Ryan stopped defending Nicole and started examining facts. Later that afternoon, he visited Evelyn. I remained nearby but gave them privacy. Nearly an hour passed before he emerged from the sunroom. His eyes were red. Not from tears but from realization. "Grandma trusted us," he said quietly as we stood on the porch. "She trusted me." I did not know how to respond. Sometimes there are no comforting words. Only truth. The following morning, Linda called with an update. The bank review was progressing faster than expected, because additional records had already confirmed several unauthorized account changes. More importantly, digital access logs revealed a consistent pattern. The same devices had repeatedly accessed both Evelyn's accounts and several accounts connected to Ryan's household finances. Whoever controlled those devices had visibility into far more information than anyone realized. That evening, Ryan called again. His voice sounded different, clearer, determined. "I need to talk to Nicole," he said. "But I am not going to accuse her." "Not yet." I agreed. The evidence was growing, but emotions could still cloud judgment. Facts mattered. Documentation mattered. The truth mattered. After the call ended, I sat alone in my living room watching the sun disappear beyond the trees outside my window. The house was quiet, yet for the first time in weeks I felt something shifting. The confusion that had surrounded us from the beginning was beginning to clear. The missing statements, the blocked cards, the redirected notifications, the hidden transfers, the false vacation timeline. None of them were isolated incidents. They were pieces of the same puzzle. And somewhere at the center of that puzzle was a person who believed nobody would ever connect them. What that person did not know was that the final piece had already been found. We simply had not revealed it yet. The final piece revealed itself sooner than any of us expected. 2 days after Ryan's conversation with Nicole, he called and asked Evelyn and me to come to his house on Sunday afternoon. His voice remained calm, but there was a firmness in it that had not been there before. When I arrived, the atmosphere felt strangely quiet. Nicole sat at the dining room table with her arms folded. Ryan sat across from her. A thick folder rested between them. Evelyn took the seat beside me and placed her purse gently on the floor. Nobody spoke for several moments. Then Ryan opened the folder. Inside were copies of the bank records, account access logs, transfer histories, and authorization forms. He had spent the previous 48 hours organizing everything, page by page, date by date, fact by fact. "I am not interested in arguments," he said calmly. "I am interested in explanations." Nicole's expression barely changed. At first she claimed everything had been done to help Evelyn manage her finances. Then Ryan showed her the access logs. She said she was trying to simplify account management. Ryan showed her the redirected notifications. She insisted she had only followed instructions. Then he showed her the transfer records. The room fell silent. I watched Nicole carefully. For months, perhaps years, she had always seemed prepared with answers. This time was different. Every explanation collided with documented evidence. Every excuse created a new contradiction. Evelyn remained remarkably composed. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. She simply listened. That made the moment even more powerful. Eventually Ryan placed one final document on the table. It was the authorization form containing the questionable signature. "Did Grandma knowingly approve this?" he asked. Nicole looked down at the paper but did not answer immediately. The silence stretched. Outside, a lawnmower hummed somewhere down the street. Inside, nobody moved. Finally, she admitted that several documents had been presented together during routine paperwork reviews. She insisted she never intended harm. She claimed she had only been trying to manage growing financial pressure. Yet even as she spoke, her explanation failed to address the hidden transfers, the disabled alerts, the replacement cards, or the blocked account access. The facts remained unchanged. Ryan leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes briefly. The disappointment on his face was impossible to miss. Not anger. Not outrage. Just disappointment. Sometimes that hurts far more. Evelyn quietly folded her hands in her lap. "You should have asked for help," she said softly. "You never needed to hide anything from family." Nicole looked away. For the first time since this ordeal began, nobody tried to defend what had happened. The truth had finally reached the surface. Not through shouting. Not through confrontation. Through records. Documentation. Patience. As the meeting ended, Ryan gathered the folder and informed everyone that the bank review would continue until every transaction was fully resolved. Nicole said very little after that. Neither did anyone else. When Evelyn and I walked back to my car, she paused beside the driveway and looked toward the house one last time. The sadness in her eyes remained, but something else had appeared beside it. Relief. After weeks of confusion, uncertainty, and quiet fear, she finally knew what had happened. And sometimes the truth, even when painful, is still lighter to carry than doubt. 3 months later, Evelyn and I returned to the same restaurant. The leaves had begun to change color, and a cool autumn breeze moved through the parking lot as we walked toward the entrance. Neither of us mentioned why we had chosen that particular place. We did not need to. Some locations become part of a story whether we want them to or not. The hostess greeted us warmly and led us to a table near the window. As we settled into our seats, I noticed something different about Evelyn. She looked lighter. Not younger. Not untouched by what had happened. Just lighter. The weeks following the bank review had been difficult, but they had also brought clarity. The investigation had confirmed the unauthorized account changes. The missing funds had been traced. New safeguards had been established. More importantly, Evelyn had regained control of her finances and her peace of mind. Trust had been damaged, but truth had finally replaced uncertainty. We ordered lunch and spent most of the meal talking about ordinary things. Her garden. My neighbor's new puppy. A television show we both enjoyed. For the first time in months, our conversation felt normal again. No documents. No account statements. No unanswered questions. Just two women sharing a meal. At one point Evelyn smiled and laughed so hard that she nearly spilled her iced tea. The sound filled the table with warmth. I realized then how much I had missed hearing her laugh without worry hiding behind it. Halfway through lunch my phone vibrated. It was a message from Ryan. He asked if he could stop by Evelyn's house later that afternoon. Over the previous months he had worked hard to rebuild trust. He had taken responsibility for not paying closer attention. He had listened instead of arguing. Most importantly, he had remained present even when the truth was painful. Healing did not happen overnight, but it had begun. When the check finally arrived, neither Evelyn nor I reached for it immediately. We simply looked at each other and smiled. Then she opened her purse and removed a newly issued card. Her hand was steady, her expression calm. The server returned with the payment device. Evelyn inserted the card. A few seconds passed. Then a soft tone sounded. Approved. Such a small moment. Such an ordinary sound. Yet it carried the weight of everything we had lived through. The server handed back the receipt and thanked us. Evelyn folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her purse. Not because she needed proof. Not because she doubted anything. Simply because that was who she had always been. Careful. Organized. Strong. As we walked back toward the parking lot, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk. Evelyn paused beside my car and looked at me with a gentle smile. You know, she said, I thought losing money was the worst thing that could happen. She looked toward the restaurant behind us. I was wrong. Losing trust hurts far more. Then she squeezed my hand. But finding the truth helps you find yourself again. I drove home thinking about those words. The lunch that once brought embarrassment and confusion had become something entirely different. Not a memory of loss. A reminder of resilience. Because in the end, the most valuable thing Evelyn recovered was never sitting in a bank account. It was her dignity. And that, unlike any card or statement, could never be taken away again.